Okay, so we are going to kick off this Coach's Corner. This one is going to be with my friend, Dr. Lindsay, and she's going to be talking to us about foot health. So, Dr. Lindsay, will you just introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your 411?
I would love to. Yes, thank you, Rachel, for having me. I'm so excited. I always like to talk about the foot and share my knowledge with people. A little background about me. I'm a physical therapist by training. I've been practicing since 2009, and I was in an outpatient setting for about 13 years. And then just starting last year was my first full year entirely taking clients strictly online. So little about like kind of how I got there is growing up, I was somebody who was super active. I played soccer, basketball, all competitive. Developed knee pain at an early age, started wearing orthotics, rigid shoes, went to therapy. That stuff worked. But then into my adult years, still staying active into my 20s, into my 30s, my knees were still bothering me. And, I go have them assessed by providers, and the answer is the same things: more orthotics, more shoes, more surgeries, et cetera. So I sort of took my own health. I took it into my own hands, literally, and then started doing more research, and then deep dove sort of into the foot and became a big fan of wide toe box shoes. And then it kind of went from there, honestly, for me personally. And then I started integrating that with my clients more, who I was seeing coming in and out of the clinic doors throughout the year, honestly, with often the same ailments, right? The same left-sided knee pain, the same right heel pain, the same left shoulder pain. And I just felt like I was working in an environment that was so restrictive. I couldn't give these clients what they needed. And clearly they weren't getting what they needed because they were still returning with the same symptoms. So that's why I left that space and then created my own online business where I treat primarily lower extremity foot issues, but really anything head to toe. I work with clients for all sorts of reasons. But that's, I guess how I got here.
You mentioned, and just for anyone that doesn't know, we know each other through the business coaching that we both did at the same time. So we met each other through our business coach and became friends. And she actually visited Clovis. What was that, last summer?
Or September, I think. Driving back through. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Great dinner. Got to meet.
Yeah. So we know each other through that, and we know each other personally. We've met in person. She's good people. You mentioned the wide toe boxes. I feel like wide toe boxes are definitely having a moment. Why is a shoe with a wide toe box? And I was just wearing my Vans, which is not a wide toe box, but they're very comfortable. But why are wide toe boxes popular? Why are they having a moment? If you haven't heard of them, why should you start thinking about shoes with wide toe boxes?
Beautiful. Anyone who wears shoes, which is pretty much every single person, right? We've all grown up wearing shoes, even though we can walk barefooted. And the shoes that we have traditionally worn, traditional footwear, has a tapering at the end. And if we look at the human foot, if we even look way back when humans, before the time of wearing shoes came around, I think it was like 30,000 years ago, roughly. And examining skeletons prior to that time, looking at a foot shape, you've got this nice splay between the big toe and the little toe, kind of like a hand, its own hand really on the floor. Over time, scientists, archaeologists started to notice that these bones got smaller, the toes started to come in more and more, and the shape of the foot changed over time. And they noticed that corresponded to when shoes were introduced that had this more tapered or narrow ending. Fast forward to where we are now, I don't know exactly what spurred necessarily this wide toe box phenomenon, other than just maybe more education about the foot shape and really allowing that foot display. When our foot can separate, when our big toe can actually line up with the rest of the foot instead of being angled in, some of those will be called a bunion. It's not always that. If it's not painful, it's not necessarily something that would be addressed. But that's just one example of something that could cause pain at that toe as a result of being in this narrow toe box. Having a wide toe box gives your toes the space to separate It allows the nerves that run between them to do their job so it's not painful for them. A lot of folks can have like midfoot pain, toe pain as a result of being in these narrow shoes. And then finally, having that space allows the muscles that actually provide the structure and integrity for stability in the foot to do their job. Whereas when we're in a narrow toe box shoe and those toes can't separate to like their full capability, those muscles can't do their job. So wide toe box allows our toes to create a wider base of support. It can decrease pain for a lot of conditions where just a narrow toe box is the sole culprit. And then also it can improve the stability and strength of the foot because it allows the muscles to actually do the thing that they're supposed to do.
You really know a lot about feet. I am getting that right now. How much of the time do you spend educating people about like what shoes they should be choosing for the activity that they want to be doing?
I feel like it's kind of always ongoing, you know. I mean, I do create content, right, for that. And so a lot of times I'm just reiterating and sharing how a wide toe box can be really impactful in your foot health and in pain if you're having it. With every client, it is absolutely something we discuss on the first call if we haven't already. Some of my clients come to me, you know, through different avenues. So some may be somebody who they get on a discovery call with me first. Maybe they don't know me well, but even in that discussion, I might ask them some questions about their footwear. And then from there, the education goes. Not everyone is super receptive to changing the shoes they're wearing. And I would say, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I would say that we have this discussion about footwear. They still may not change their footwear, but at least they have the knowledge so that if down the road things are still an issue for them, they could be like, you know what, Lindsay planted this seed a long time ago. Maybe we revisit this and give these shoes a try. Because quite frankly, there's people who are just sort of set in their ways, or they're comfortable and believe that the shoe isn't really the cause. So I still share that with them, but they might still choose to not switch from what they're wearing into a wide toe box.
For like optimal foot health, do you recommend people spend X amount of time of their day just without shoes on? I mean, given that like the temperature is conducive for that, but like, is there a percentage of time that it would be great if you're barefoot 50% of the time or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I don't know that I have a specific number. I just ran this foot challenge where I asked people to track over the course of a whole week how much time they spent in bare feet. And it was interesting because I literally had some people who were like, you want me to list this in minutes? And it's like they were spending, you know, hours and hours and hours in bare feet. So they're like, you want me to list how many minutes, not the hours? And I was like, well, you can do whatever you want. But then there were other people who were clearly only spending, you know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes a day. And I think those are folks who either, you know, are on their feet a lot, right? So they're wearing shoes for work or whatever they do during the day. They also might be folks who wear shoes in the house. And some people, I think most people seem to do that because they've been advised to never go barefoot, or that person feels that being barefoot is painful. That's at least two of the most common reasons I encounter. And so that's a place where I will initially start with people and say, when you're home in your house, right? Your comfort, you're safe, you feel good there, take your shoes off. Like if you're typically walking around your house in the morning, like if you wake up and put house slippers on, maybe don't do that. Maybe put socks on if your feet are cold, or maybe just go without it. So I think first I would try to get someone, I would ask them kind of like general, like how much time do you think you spend in a given day in bare feet? And then having that sort of assessment and then seeing like, okay, what happens if we start to find ways to spend more time there over the course of a week and see if that makes any changes in how you're feeling. But I mean, I guess I would just, the answer simply might be some amount of time a day. Like at least go to bed without shoes on. If nothing else, maybe spend 15 minutes at home, standing, walking, sitting, just like no shoes on your feet.
I remember when the barefoot running shoes came out and it was like individual toes in like different things, the Vibrams and those things. And then now there's like a movement to just not wearing shoes when you're training. And I wasn't exposed to that until I got kettlebell certified, and they told us barefoot. And I was like, barefoot in a gym? What? Or they said wear like Converse shoes, and they specifically called out Converse. And it wasn't because of the wide toe box. It was similar to my Vans. It was because they wanted your foot relatively flat to the floor in a flexible shoe, unlike a very rigid sort of like workout shoe that people think about when they think about like workout shoes. It's probably a running shoe or a cross trainer or something that has like a ton of support. And so what do you think about the like training barefoot or training in like minimal footwear? What's that about?
Yes. I love it too. I don't think I started doing more of it until probably I started working from home, is what I'm thinking. Or you know what? I bet it was the pandemic, in fact, when we were doing more workouts at home, because before I was going to a CrossFit gym and there's no way I was going barefoot, or it didn't even occur to me.
Because they're gross.
It's gross. I will wear socks in my CrossFit gym. Actually, you know what? The CrossFit gym I'm at right now, I do go barefoot. I will. And I actually wash my feet afterward. But I mean, my hands are touching the ground. Like, what's wrong with my feet touching the ground? But this particular one, it's not like I'm walking through piles of sweat either, which is really good. So the barefoot training, number one, the reason it has become popular and the reason that I also like it is because our feet, the anatomy of them, we have over 200,000 nerve endings on each foot. Because we've been raised in our society and world where we're wearing shoes on our feet, different kinds, pretty much often, if not all the time when we're outside, our feet become really desensitized, or sensitive, I should say, is really what happens, sensitive to anything outside of a shoe. So that's why for most of us, if we were to kick off shoes now and go walk on some rocks, some like small pebbles, it probably wouldn't feel great for many of us. It probably wouldn't feel very good at all. And that's simply because our feet haven't been exposed to those textures and those pressures. And as you get desensitized to that, so for a lot of folks, first going barefoot and trying barefoot training, it can just, you could sort of get a lot, almost like sensory overload. So that's why it's kind of nice to spend time at home in bare feet before you try something like this. But once you do, then you get to like utilize all of that information. Then your body gets to like filter out the crap of like, oh, we're just standing on the floor right now. This isn't uncomfortable. We're totally cool here. Then it can start to tell you like, okay, my big toe is touching the floor. My second toe is, my third. The more we can get our brain aware of what our foot is doing with the floor, how it's interacting with it. Is it on a surface that's flat and firm? Is it on a surface that's soft? Is it on a surface that's rocky? All of that is information that our foot can tell our brain, which can then make really quick adjustments so that we can stay stable, and also make adjustments further up the chain so we can stay strong during a movement. So being in bare feet, we get to take advantage of all of those nerve endings and ultimately tap into connecting our foot further up to our lower limb, to our hip and core. And I don't know that I could cite science for this, but I know that I personally feel like stronger and more stable in bare feet doing a heavy lift versus being in something like a runner. Yeah, if I were in something like the Vibrams you talked about, or I wear Vivos, which have no toes, but they're pretty flat. I'll still wear Metcons sometimes. They have a wider toe box, not Metcons, Reebok Nanos. They have a wider toe box than pretty much any cross trainer I've seen, and they're the firmest. And that's why people really like what you said about the Vans and the Converse, really flat and flexible, because that allows your foot to have this really more intimate connection with the ground compared to when you're in something like a Brooks stability shoe or even a Reebok Nano, for instance.
So are you getting a better workout if you're closer to the floor?
Good question.
Or more in touch with the floor?
I believe that you become a better mover, like you become a whole lot more in tune with your own body and how you feel and how you move, which I think more aware you become of how your body moves in response to the floor, allows you to become a greater athlete, build strength quicker, etc. With regards to, let's say, addressing lower extremity strength, I think that going barefoot has its benefits over being in shoes to a certain point, right? We get to a point where we start going for more power, perhaps, or explosiveness. And when we are considering like the safety of our toes, we then might have to be like, okay, let's put a shoe on to like really do this. Yeah, but as far as getting a better workout, I mean, I'd lean toward yes, but I don't know that I have like research that could tell us definitively that that is true.
What percentage of people that you work with have plantar fasciitis as their like primary concern?
Totally. I would say 75% of the people that come to me have currently or have in the past at some point had that as a diagnosis.
And I'm sure the answer is it depends, but like if you had to say most of those people do better with orthotics, or most of those people do better with PT, or most of those people do better by being barefoot, is there like one thing that you could point to that's like the most helpful?
Sure, totally. Plantar fasciitis is a tricky diagnosis for one, and I'll just sort of give this quick umbrella statement. Research recently has sort of really dove into the tissues itself. And so people who have this true plantar fasciitis pain, this pain that happens at their heel, they've done tissue biopsies. And what's really happening is that tissue is not inflamed. It's like chronically starting to degenerate and change. So the collagen fibers are changing from type 2 to 1 or 1 to 2. I forget, I'm going to say it backward. Whichever it is, it becomes more dense, more kind of fragile, if you will. And so it's not this inflammatory issue, which historically it's been treated that way. It's been like, oh, your heel is inflamed, your plantar fascia is inflamed. Let's put you, in these shoes, which will limit motion, which, okay, so then we'll take away motion. So then that won't get irritated. That makes sense. Here's some ice, here's some ibuprofen. Fast forward, we've done more research. We know that anti-inflammatories aren't necessarily super, super helpful right away if we have an initial injury. And now that we know that plantar fasciitis isn't this true inflammation injury, if we're taking anti-inflammatories now, it's likely not going to be making a really big impact in our symptoms. So there are a handful of folks where I would say, yes, right away, you might feel better if we put you in some kind of orthotic or shoe, something to limit motion if it's like a really acute heel pain, like if it just happened. But if this has been ongoing, I would be like, let's get you in your bare feet. Because most likely these folks are people who have already been in the shoes, in the orthotics. They're now coming to me and it's like, well, have you tried any foot strengthening? And if anything, all I hear really is, oh yeah, I've done, towel curls, towel crunches, where your toes are just gripping a towel over and over. And I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of saying like, do you do any upper body strengthening? And someone's saying they do bicep curls. I'm like, that's it. And that's really where the change happens. So the people that I see who are in acute pain may respond really well to being immobilized in some kind of orthotic or shoe for a short period. But again, most people who come to see me have had pain for longer than just a few days. So those are the people that I'm like, let's get you out of the shoe. Let's get in bare feet and start spending more time there if we can. And then we target really small muscles of the foot specifically. So these are exercises like big toe extension, little toe extensions, things that seem really silly because it's your toes and we don't usually spend time focusing on muscles that move them. So doing that starts to bring awareness to our foot so that then we can really target the muscles there to build strength in the arch of our foot, which is exactly where that plantar fascia runs. And over time has been overstretched, which is what's caused this collagen change and this overall degeneration down the line, causing pain in the heel. And the answer is to basically improve the the stability of the arch of the foot when we do that through strengthening the little tiny muscles.
That's so fascinating. I mean, I guess I figured that plantar fasciitis was coming from something else, like your hips not moving well or your knees not moving well. Is that sometimes baked into it too, or no?
Yes, good point. I'm going to grab a foot model. I've like messed with this model too much, so the big toes come off of it. So if this is the bottom of your foot, your plantar fascia runs from the heel and it has bands that insert up into the toes. So if your big toe, if you think of when you're walking and we're taking a step forward and that back leg is trailing. So I'm stepping forward with my left, my right foot's trailing. We're ideally pressing forward over our big toe.
Yeah.
You don't have that motion because either the joint is limited or the plantar fascia that runs from the heel to the big toe is really tight. Then we can't get over that big toe. And then that's typically where someone might get that heel pain in their step. Sometimes it's right when we make contact, but sometimes it's as we're starting to roll through that big toe. And again, if there's limited motion there, that'll put increased strain here, as well as if our ankle can't bend and flex. So as we're taking that step forward, if I step forward with my right leg and I'm starting to bring that left leg through, if my right leg can't continue to come forward over my foot, I'm going to make up for that motion somewhere. And that's typically going to come from here at the heel. So limited motion below and above where the tissue is, I absolutely find restrictions. Typically, those who have limited big toe extension also have limited hip extension. So that's like a couch stretch, or what's it called? The most amazing stretch in the world, or the world's greatest stretch, right? The forward lunge.
Yeah, with rotation.
Those are two like options that I will often give folks who have heel pain, because I will see that along with limitations down in their foot. And
one of the
came first, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. One of the things that I see a lot with people who are unable to get into a good looking squat is that limited range of motion in their ankle flexion. And I don't know if that stems from the foot, if that's a knee thing, a hip thing, a back thing, or what, but I do know that when I first, started training with shoes that probably had a higher heel, and now I train barefoot or in Vivos, I think that that has been a big plus in my squat mobility and just being able to like have that ankle flexion. Can you talk about that just kind of as the general problem that people face? And I was told also that like years of wearing high heels for women were probably a detriment to your ankle flexion. So here, this would be the extension, and then this would be a flexion, that this goes away the longer you spend in this position.
Yes. Okay, so let me make sure I am answering correctly. So we're going to talk about the effects that being in these shoes with the heel lift of some kind or a significant one can do to our tissues over time. Is that right? And then how being in a more flat shoe can allow us to get into our ankle range better. Is that kind of what, did I get it?
Yeah, maybe the second one, even more so.
Perfect. Okay. So like you were saying, like when you squat, if someone can't squat low, or maybe you start to see like their trunk is leaning forward really far, right? Certain mechanics you want to start to correct, but you can't quite figure out. The ankle is often a real big, like a place I'll go first. The knee, to me, unless the patient is like, my knee hurts, I'm not necessarily thinking that's their limiting factor for getting low, but sometimes it's their hip, but I will look at their ankle for sure. So what we were talking about with walking, right? The more this lower limb can come forward over our foot, same thing in a squat, as we squat down, the more we can allow that lower limb to come forward. We can also think of it as just our knee coming forward over our toes, which is a cue or something that many of us have heard is a no-no. It's a yes, if it's pain-free and trained correctly. It's a no-no for someone who's maybe actively in pain and is being advised to avoid pain, but they should absolutely be trained into that range at some point. So the more our lower limb and knee can come forward, that's going to free up space back here where our butt and hips can drop down so that we can have this beautiful upright squat. When we're in a flat shoe or just barefoot, the ankle is really going to be the limiting factor. If we have really tight ankles, let's say Rachel's like, can you get a little bit lower? And it's just like not happening. And she's looking at your feet and thinking, this is the problem. She might suggest putting like a plate under your heel or putting a shoe on, something that just has a slight elevation. Yes, exactly. So you're now in this slightly, we say plantar flexed or extended postures, I think what Rachel was saying. So now you're in the slightly pointed posture. When we do that, that kind of takes the ankle out of the equation because we're starting from this pointed position as we now start to descend into our squat. So our lower limb has a little more room to play before we perhaps reach that sticking point, ultimately allows us to drop lower, which is why a lot of power lifters will wear what they call lifters, which is a special shoe that has like literally I think it's like 21 millimeters or something like that under the heel, so that they can have this really, really deep squat while they're lifting a very heavy load. And then just to, I guess, touch on just the shoes you were saying, like, so if we are on like a pointed shoe over time, if we are wearing a shoe, whether it's a high heel, which obviously is going to be much more pronounced, or a lifter, or a Brooks running shoe, we'll say, which has some amount of heel lift, like 7 millimeters about, we'd say. Yeah, that's probably it. Over time, that means the tissue back here is used to this ankle being in this position. So if we're in shoes all the time, and then we finally get home at the end of the day, we kick them off, and now we're in bare feet. Now our foot goes into this more flat position. We get more stretch back here. That can be no problem for some people, but for others that can cause pain in the heel, in the foot, contribute to developing irritation at the heel, plantar fasciitis. Did that cover that?
Yeah, totally. If you, and I'm sure you have 100 different PT exercises that you prescribe to people based on what they're currently dealing with. But if you had to pick like your top 3 favorite, foot exercises or ankle, whatever, for just general, like good foot health, is that a really like stupid question?
No, it's perfect because I actually thought about it before our call.
Do you want me to demo anything?
I can too. I was just going to pull this box up. What is that?
Yes, go for it. Can I ask you about that wedge that you have?
The slant board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that for squats? What is that for?
Yes, squats or calf stretches.
Okay.
I will do heel raises.
Okay.
I will toe raises. And I'll do a variety of step downs in this position.
Okay.
Are you familiar with slant board guide?
No.
I think Shantae did his programming years ago, and that's like when I first got introduced to him. But not slant board guide, knees over toes guide. Yes,
I am familiar with him.
I did his knee zero programming to check it out, and that ultimately I ended up getting that, and I'm super glad I have it.
Awesome.
Okay, so we talked about the ankle being a limiting factor. This is the stretch that I give all my clients. And people always want like one thing, right? They're like, if I have to do one thing before class, like what should it be? And I'm like, okay, I want you to know your ankle mobility is crap. And we want to stretch your big toe too. I'm going to use a box because an elevated surface is going to take my hip out of the picture. We talked about how like hip extension limiting foot motion can often go hand in hand. So I'll do this elevated. We're gonna target my left foot so that you can see. You hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I just want to do it with you.
Oh yeah. So I've got my left foot on here. I have a towel roll, which I'll use here in just a second. We're gonna do just a dorsiflexion stretch or an ankle stretch where we drive that knee forward over the toes. Feel free to like sink into that with your weight. Use the bench or whatever surface you're on for support. So I've got my knee as far forward as I can. I should probably back out of that. I feel like my clients are like, I don't you when I do that. I'm like, don't worry about that. I go really far, but like, let's do it here, right? And we might start to feel like this is a little snug. That's what we're looking for. We want to feel some kind of stretch or restriction or stopping point in our ankle, maybe the back of our calf. And that's the position we want to get to and hold. Do you feel that when you do that?
Yes, I love this stretch.
So we're going to take it a little further. We're going to take a little towel. You might just need a little bit. I'm going to double it up and triple it up. So I'm going to roll it like that. And we're only going to put it under the big toe. So the big toe is elevated. The others are resting. Now, same motion. Drive that knee forward as far as you can. And we're going to stay in that stretch with that toe elevated. And if you can make sure that the ball of your big toe is in contact with the floor, so that part's not lifted, just the toe itself, that's going to start to stretch into that tissue of our big toe, our plantar fascia, all the way back up the calf. So we just get a little more tissue involved. You might find that you can go higher. Some people use a lacrosse ball. I just find it kind of gets too wiggly. But the higher you go, I personally start to feel more of a stretch like here on the inside of my ankle, which tracks with the big muscle from your toe that runs up the back of your calf. Do you feel that at all on the inside of your ankle or any differently?
I don't feel anything different.
Make it bigger.
Okay. Stacy Shadler does this a lot on her like Instagram and in her workshops, and I have never understood what the fuck is going on. So I am excited to learn what is happening.
So keep your heel down, stay heavy in your heel. The ball of your big toe is down. And again, you maybe even have to go a little higher, but what we're targeting is a muscle that runs from, it attaches literally to the base of your big toe, runs down through the arch of your foot and around the inside aspect of your ankle. It's called your flexor hallucis longus muscle. And it's important because, I guess I didn't touch on this, but your big toe, we talked about toe splay and all of that, but your big toe has muscles that control just it, separate from the rest. How's this feeling?
I don't know. I'm using socks as my like
Maybe
lift,
you need
and I
like I have a hand towel that
yeah.
I actually ended up going here with it.
Okay.
So maybe both here.
I probably just need more lift, but I should be feeling it in here.
That's ideally the tissue we're targeting. I kind of hate, I don't know, I hate saying like, you should feel this. They're like, well, nothing. So ideally, that's the tissue we're targeting. So ideally, I would love it if you felt it there. But if not, you're still getting that great ankle stretch. And clearly, we're still getting some amount of mobility and tissue stretch, through that tissue. But I would just go higher with yours.
Okay.
All right, and then the other two exercises that I like to do, these are the silly ones. This is where we're gonna have all 5 toes just grounded. We got our heel on the ground. We can do this sitting, standing, but we have to have our whole foot in contact with the floor. We're gonna aim to lift our big toe only while keeping toes 2 through 5 on the floor, and then lower down. Lift up, lower down. Some people will stare at their feet and like, it's like they're willing their big toe to lift and it just won't. And it's because we are literally drawing awareness to the fact that, yes, there are muscles strictly responsible for moving this toe. And the more we can get in touch with those muscles and in touch with how we can control our toes, the better we can own control of our foot.
Can I get a gold star? I can do it on both.
It's super great. I'm gonna have you do like them. If people can't do it, I will literally say, pick it up with your other hand, hold it there manually, and then let go and slowly lower down. This is where the frustration comes in, because it's sort of like, why am I doing this? But again, the more you can get in touch with those muscles, the more you can really own the shape of your foot and control your interaction with the ground. The last one is just the opposite, keeping big toe down, lifting toes 2 through 5 only. And then if you want to get real fancy, you can go big toe, little toes, big toe, little toes. And as I do this, as you start to do it, you'll probably feel some kind of tension building in those arches of the feet or the toes themselves. But I love those. They're easy to do. People can do them in their car. They can do them at work. But it does take awareness. It's not this like mindless toe squeezing a towel kind of strengthening. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure you don't care because you're a foot person, but for people that are not, I, to my knowledge, have always had like bone spurs or bunions on my feet. You can see there's one right there, and then there's one right here. They've always been that way and they're not painful. I always thought that they were bunions because that's what I've been told, but they don't cause me pain. So what do I do with those? Just like monitor them? Like what is that?
Yeah, I would say if they're not causing pain, like, okay, we don't have to worry about it. If you're like, I want to change the aesthetics of my foot and or tap into some more foot strength that maybe I didn't know I had, then I would say, okay, let's start with toe spacers so that we start to get your big toe more in a position where it's directly over the rest of the foot, right? Because your toe ultimately has this slight angle in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we first put a toe spacer on, your toe now is in this more ideal position. And then I would encourage you, because I know you've worn them before too, to then move in them, walk in them, maybe work out in them.
In toe spacers?
Yes.
I've actually never worn a toe spacer. So the closest I've gotten is when you get a pedicure or you give yourself a pedicure and you put your feet in those thingamajigs or your toes.
I think you will love it, Rachel. Seriously.
Okay.
When your big toe is moved open, and we can really then tap into the big toe muscles that control that part of the foot, which is a key factor in maintaining stability in the arch, then we can kind of connect from the floor up a lot better. I had a client literally, I think it was like, she messaged me. She's like, I'm having the hardest time like feeling my glutes when I'm doing deadlifts, I think was her movement. Maybe it was squats. Either way, it was one of those bigger movements. And I said, let's just put you in toe spacers. And she did. And she's like, it was a connection she'd never felt before, because now your big toe is allowed to open when it's not. There are muscles on the outside of the big toe that are literally responsible for keeping it pulled in. But because of you wearing probably shoes over the course of your whole life, right? And you've acquired this shape, the muscles out here can't really do their job so well. It's like way hard for them to try to interact with that toe when it's angled here compared to being straight out. So having a better alignment allows us to tap into these muscles in our foot, which I guess this is a really general way of saying have fascial connections that go from literally big toe to the heel, back of the leg, to our back, all the way up to like our cranium. So fascial experts would be like, let's look at your big toe if you're having a headache. But yeah, you know, I think you should do a kettlebell workout in toe spacers. You'd
so everyone's going to want to know what kind of toe spacer. Is this just like an Amazon link that you can recommend?
That's what I like. Honestly, there's a brand on Amazon. I think it's just called Bodhi, Mind Bodhi, Bodhi. They don't have it. I don't have any kind of like discount code with them. They're just $10 toe spacers. There are companies out there that I partner with, like Naboso, who sell like a more expensive pair. And honestly, to me, the best pair is the pair that you are going to wear. Sometimes convincing somebody to buy a $60 pair of toe spacers doesn't sound like appealing, especially if maybe they don't have pain, right? So buy the $10 pair if you're going to wear them. And I personally find that the $10 pair stays on my toes better when I'm exercising. I have a more expensive pair that look like this. But again, it's just like squishy silicone. But the ones I have that are the cheaper ones have like a stretchy band that makes sure it stays on your toes so it doesn't slide around, which makes working out in them a lot easier.
And if you're wearing them for 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, like
I would start with 10. If you've never worn them, start with 10. Someone asked me the other day if they could wear them while they sleep because they're having a hard time integrating it into their day. And I was like, first, I want you to test it while you're awake and alert so that you can like tap into like, how does my foot feel with these on? The worst someone's ever said is they wore them for a half hour and their toe felt numb. They took it off, it went away. And the next 10 they wore them, they wore them for an hour and a half, no problem. So start with 10 minutes, just sitting, hanging around. From there, you can just build tolerance walking around your house in them or just wearing them if that works. And if you feel adventurous, try a barefoot workout in them. See how things feel different.
I mean, I don't feel adventurous, but I'm up for a challenge.
Maybe not today.
And an Instagram live workout with you in toe spacers. We'll do that.
Yeah, we should totally do that. I would absolutely do a toe spacer kettlebell workout with you.
That'll be great. Justin, do you have any questions that have rolled across your brain that I have not asked?
Yes, I have a couple.
Justin's a reporter, so watch out for him.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna expose you and just
call me out on
a full-on investigative report on feet doctors and yeah. So first of all, you're talking about these box-toed shoes. Do you have any recommendations for shoes? Because I had some 20 years ago. They were my favorite shoes ever. I wore them for everything, to everything. And I don't remember the brand that they were. And I wore them out, like the sole split, and I still wore them because even with a split sole, they were more comfortable than anything else. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. What would you recommend?
Overall, comfort is king. So no matter what I say here, comfort is king, right? You could try the shoes I suggest and be like, oh, this just doesn't fit well for me. And you might try something totally different. But wide toe box shoes personally, and the ones that I recommend the most frequently are Altras, ALTRA. You can find them at REI for sure. I know various running stores carry them. What I like about them is every shoe is a wide toe box for one. Every shoe is what we call zero drop, meaning there's no amount of lift under the heel. So kind of like those Converse and Vans we were talking about, the foot lays completely flat in the shoe. So all the Altras are like that. If you haven't worn a shoe that has zero drop like this, for some people, depending on like what you're wearing them for, like if you're a runner, going to a zero drop shoe might be, you might notice it when you're running, especially if you're transitioning from like a Nike or a Brooks. So I just like to tell people ahead of time, like you might feel things a little different. You might feel your calf work a little harder. You might feel your foot work a little harder. It's not bad, but it just might feel like new to you. But if you're wearing them just to go for a walk, maybe work out in, you may not notice it as much. The other thing I like about them is they have a variety of stack height, which means like the amount of cushion. So you could have, again, something like a Vivo Barefoot or Converse or Vans, which are pretty minimal, or something like gosh, like the Hokas, right? Which just like super, super bulky. But depending on what you're doing, some people like to have that cushion. So with the Ultras, I like it because you can have like a variety, you have a variety of amount of cushioning choices to look at. Whereas like Vivo Barefoot, right? It's just one, like you just get flat, that's it. And if you're someone who wants some amount of cushion, that's the brand that I like. There are other like barefoot shoe brands called Xero, Xero, B Lenka. And honestly, my favorite, I don't know if you can put this girl's, can I put something in the chat or can you?
Yeah, you can. I can do it too.
I think it's at Anya's Shoe Reviews on Instagram. I can't be sure that that's the exact one. Let me look. She is my go-to like actual shoe review for any kind of barefoot wide toe box shoe that comes out, like literally anything. When it comes to activity and physicality, like the Ultras are the best that I've come across, are the ones that I like the most. Anya's Reviews. So there's no shoe in the name, just Anya's Reviews.
So, whoops.
Yeah, and that's on Instagram. She's a super great resource. One other brand that I was going to mention that I've not worn yet, but actually I think at Boss Up, I saw a couple people in them. I was like, are you guys wearing Topos or Tolos? Tolos. And it's a wide toe box shoe. It's more of a runner. And it's got, you know how some shoes, again, like we think of a Converse or a Vans, it's really flat. But then you think of like a runner, Nike something. And it's got this like toe curl at the end, toe spring is what we call it. The Tolos shoe brand has more of a toe spring, if that's something that you like in your shoe. And some runners really like that. Other people don't care. Some people don't know the difference. I'm one of them.
Dude, this Anya girl has 149,000 followers on Instagram.
She literally started as like someone who had persistent heel and foot pain, was like put in a boot and casts and nothing was working. And she like did her own research and just kind of exploded over like the pandemic and then some. And it's like, there's always shoe brands coming out. I had someone else tell me about, or Instagram even, like Flux footwear. Do you guys get any of those ads on your algorithm? Doesn't feed you those ones? Like that's a brand that's like come up. I'm like, maybe I should buy those. I'm like, I don't need any more shoes.
I'm gonna get
like,
because my Instagram's open and you just said it. So
I was just about to say that same thing. I'm like, I will now.
Thanks a lot.
It hurt me. Now
Yep.
you've got, yeah.
So I had one other question.
Yeah.
So I'm finding that I'm having this weird pain at the front of my ankle. So like where I'm like right here. Yeah, like right where Rachel's pointing. Like that popped up. Yeah, there you go. Maybe more to the outside of it. Do you have any idea what would be in there that would be causing me pain when I step back to do like a burpee or even just kneel down and that's my back foot?
Like
So that's
lunge.
interesting because there's an extra component there with the movement you just described. So you were saying it feels pinchy here, right? And it feels pinchy when like this kind of motion is happening, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's more.
And it happens when your foot is flexed versus it's not happening when you're pointing your foot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You also said it happens when you step back. Like
yeah, like that, yeah.
You are landing on your big toe, ideally. But my point is this: if your big toe is limited at all, or your ankle, that motion for sure is going to show that. It'll push you into it. So if your big toe lacks any extension, or if you are limited here, that can certainly cause that pinching pain that you're having with those motions. Now, is it coming from here or here? Not sure. And likely when we have limitations in motion, it's either coming from soft tissue, like tightness maybe in our calf muscle, or sometimes there's like, I don't know, this isn't the best model because I have one with like other soft tissue overlaying, but there's ligaments and tendons and fascia. And unfortunately, those things can get caught in the joint if like we twisted it or something just like stepped funny once. So that could be it. Yes, there could be wear and tear of the joint itself. Maybe that's like kind of arthritic. Quite honestly, I think that it's very common to see arthritis on an ankle x-ray, yet not have pain. So even when someone comes to me and they're like, my ankle's really stiff, I'm told it's arthritic. It is, I believe that, but I also believe that we can make significant changes and it not be painful for you. So whether it's like bony limitations or soft tissue, I think that elevated ankle stretch that we went over with the big toe would be a really great one to try, and then see how you feel with those movements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely try that. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I think, Justin, I feel like I showed you the same stretch, but I was on the ground demonstrating it. And I never thought to like bring it up here, which makes it a lot more approachable and probably doable for people than like being crunched up on the floor. So that was a good learning thing for me today.
Okay, I got to get one of those boxes now. I keep telling you that I want to get one, and now I'm like, yeah, okay, that's it. It's just a box. I just don't know why they're so expensive for a box.
Because it's like a padded box.
Yeah.
I know it's so stupid. I'll give you my wooden box that's outside. I have 2 of them and I don't use them, but they're wooden and they're heavy and they probably have spiders in them. But if you don't mind that, you can have them.
Nah, just keep the spiders. It's fine. I could probably, I'm just saying, I could probably like build one, and it'd be cheaper, but
The pandemic did that. I saw people at my gym like going to the hardware store. Like,
yeah, like I'm just gonna buy one. That's
I'm sure Rachel's got an Amazon Associates something or other.
I set up some sort of like affiliate blah blah blah, but I haven't like built my store yet. I don't know. I need a VA to like do all these. I have all these great ideas and I no time to like implement them. So yeah, we'll see about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like my Yes for All. It's been good to me. I use it every day and I have a regular size one and a little one. I'm sitting on the little one. I don't think it's super functional. So I like the 16 by 18 by 20 inch.
I was just gonna ask you the measurements we talked about the other day.
Yeah, 16, 18, 20. I think that'll be good.
Cool.
Yep. Lindsay, anything we didn't cover that you feel like people should know about? And if you answer that, cool. If you don't, I know you have some special stuff for us too that I wanted to hear about.
I'm totally not going to answer that, but now I am because I feel like I need to say something about the foot that's really cool.
How many bones are in the foot?
Oh my God. I was just about to say, I think it's 27 and then there's 33 joints. That's more interesting.
Why was I thinking there's like 100 or something?
May as well be. But I think for many people, when we think of our foot, they sort of think of it as its own, just one thing, right? Like I have foot pain or like, let's do foot things. But it's like there's 37 different joints or places where things could happen here that can affect here and further up. And I think that the more we just spend time in bare feet, I know I am a prime example, the less I actually want to be in shoes. Like I have shoes I wear that are not a wide toe box because they're cute. Or like I bought a pair of Doc Marten boots this winter and these are way cute. And I have worn them and every time my feet by 2 hours in are like, they're ready to be out and I'm ready to be out of them and that's fine. But I can go back to doing like my foot exercises and not let them get in the way. But my feet have gotten used to being in a shoe that reflects its actual shape. So the more you spend time in bare feet, I think people tend to like it more. And I just encourage you to just start at home, just spend more time there. And then Rachel mentioned I am running a paid interactive workshop specifically for people with the diagnosis of plantar fasciitis or heel pain that has just not quit. The date, it's Monday, May 22nd, which is the Monday before Memorial Day. I haven't set the time yet, but I will let you know. I'm running this paid interactive workshop, and anyone from Rachel's group, anyone, whether you're on the call or if you're watching the recording and you decide you want to join, if you sign up for the workshop, you will automatically get a foot audit with me. A footwear audit is something that I run with clients for $75. It's usually about 30 minutes of my time or so. And we literally just do a deep dive into your shoes and footwear. I do that because shoes, in my opinion, have been the thing that you can change really quickly and see change really quickly. Exercises we might do, and you might notice your body change how it feels in the moment, but it takes kind of implementing those exercises over time to really see sustainable change. But for a lot of folks, sometimes it's just getting them in the right pair of shoes so that their foot can do its job, and then they're like out running. So if you sign up for the interactive workshop, you get to sign up for a footwear audit with me for free, and I'll give Rachel like a code or something like that, so that I know that you came from her. And I will give Rachel all the deets about the day and login info, so you can get all of that.
Will you drop your Instagram into the chat? And I'm thinking anyone watching the recording is not going to see the chat, but I will direct them towards your Instagram. Any other place that you want people to go besides the gram to like learn more about you?
That's probably the best place. If you prefer to go on Facebook, you can find me there, and I am spending more and more time there. I am more active on Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then Facebook, it's just
cool. First and last name. You have been tremendously full of awesome information. I did not think that I would be like legitimately interested in learning about the foot for a full hour, but it was captivating.
I'm so happy. It's so fun to talk about.
Thank you so much.
Me.
Thank you. We'll wrap up here and we'll hit you up later for more.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Bye, Rach. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
You're welcome.